Hello everyone, in this exercise we will explore the following commands: rail revolve, record history, insert control point, and copy to layer to create and organize revolved forms with ease. So this is kind of a second iteration of the very first thing we did, which was the form revolution and iteration. So we're going to be looking over versions of those commands that we use, but a little bit more complicated and a little bit more powerful. So first thing we're going to do is I am going to delete this, and we will create a layer, a new layer. You can do so just by right-clicking in this open area of the layer tab and making a new layer, or by clicking the new layer icon right here. I'm going to rename this layer and name it curves, and I'm going to make it very bright, pop, make it magenta. I'll move this layer up here. I didn't want to do that. Move up one. Okay. So we're going to start by using some commands that we've already been using, that we're familiar with. I'm going to make a hexagon, and I'm going to make it from the origin as usual. And I'll make it, it doesn't really matter, I'll make it 2 inches from the center. And then I'll also make a circle. And I think I'll make the circle a little outside, with the center point a little outside of the hexagon. And then I'll use the array polar command from the origin, 6 pieces, beautiful. And then again, we can go through, trim everything out, or we could just use the curve Boolean command. Regions to keep inside, yep. And then we could use the invert command that we recently learned to select everything except that and delete it. I'll go ahead and add that here. Okay, so here we have this curve, and I like orienting my hexagon in this case with the apex, one of the points, pointing out to the left this way. And that's because I like working from my front viewport more than my right, for whatever reason. Okay, then we'll use the control point curve, or just the curve command, 2 names for the same command. We'll snap here, and I'll start creating the silhouette, silhouette of my vessel. I think something like this. Exaggeration here, something like this perhaps. We'll just start off kind of basic. How does that look? I'm going to tweak it a little bit before we move on because it's a little ugly. And that's with the points on command. Wow, I don't have that here. That's definitely a highlighted command, is it? Yeah. Even though we've already gone over it, I'm going to put it up here. Okay, this area is a little awkward. I'm going to lift up that chest a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then we'll use the rail revolve command. So the rail revolve command is a little bit similar to the revolve command, which is one of the first commands we learned. This is the revolve command. Revolve, if I knew how to type. And I'm going to do it for my origin. And it creates a centric revolution of this vessel. But what the rail revolve does is, instead of just accepting a centric revolution, we can use a rail for the thing that's being revolved upon. So I can start the rail revolve command. I can just type rail revolve, or I can go here and do rail revolve from the surface menu. So rail revolve, profile curve, that's this one. Rail curve, that's this one, and our axis is straight up and down from the center of the object, which is the origin. And you can see that we have this different form right here, and that's because we are revolving upon the shape that we've created. So that's what the rail revolve command does. In this case, we are going to make our lives really easy, because we're going to use the record history. I don't think it's a command. No, not a command, but it's a toggle. And the way that this works is, for just the very next command you do, not in perpetuity, the very next command you do, it records the history and creates a link between the input object and the output object. So, or input objects, I should say. I guess it could be output objects, plural too. So rail revolve, record history is on bold, profile curve, rail curve, straight up and down. And you can see record history is off now. But what that's done, that's created a link between our input curves and our output surface. I'm going to do SEL-CRV really quick to select those curves, so I could drag over everything and deselect this vessel to select them easily too. I just realized I didn't put them on the curves layer, funnily enough. So I'll put them on the curves layer really quick. I can notice it now because I can't see them. And then I'll do one more thing. I'll select those curves again. And I'm going to do a command called bring to front. And what this does is it makes it so they are drawn on top of everything else. So you can see before I did that, it was kind of like they were fighting for which one is drawn on top. But once that's done, we can very clearly see our curves. You could even see them from behind the object, but you can't click on them. If we had a different viewport rendering style like ghosted that draws things as translucent, you could click on them. But we're not going to do that right now. Shaded viewport. Okay. Cool. And I think I did a command that I don't have listed here. What was it? Bring to front. Okay. So I bet you're dying to know what the record history actually did. What we can do with that now is we can turn points on for one of our input curves. And let's go ahead and save this really quick, sorry. And we're going to use the copy to layer now. We used change layer before, but now we're going to use copy to layer. And what that does is it makes a duplicate of this object on another layer. So I'm going to do copy to layer, and I'm going to put it on layer 1. I'm going to go ahead and hide all of these layers that we're going to be copying to. Okay, suspense. Finally, we turn control points on, and we can manipulate our input curves, and the output geometry is automatically going to update. So now, without going through a lot of iterations, I can tweak my form to be something a little nicer looking. Maybe that's not nicer looking, but that's the idea. Without having to rail revolve each individual iteration. I think this terminates a little weird, so I'm going to change that. Maybe nah, I'll do Control Z. Oops. If you move the child, which is the output object, then it'll break history, but I'm just going to hit cancel and it'll undo it. So let's see. I think, God darn it. Tweak this a little bit more. I think that's looking a little bit better. So we can copy this to layer, save that iteration of it. Okay, so now let's get a little bit more complicated. We can use the insert control point to insert a control point on a curve or a surface. So I'm going to go ahead and pop a few in here. I'm just going to do a few right now, and if I don't like it, then I can just delete them. I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to start to kind of work on like a gourd face. So having some significant recurve within this vessel. I don't think I like that control point, so I'll just delete it. I'm going to bring this in a little bit. I had one up here, I wish I did, so I'll do the command again. And select the curve I want to insert on, and then click on the spots that I want. I'll add 2 just in case I want them. want to bring this one in, these out. Maybe, I don't know, that looks weird. I think this one needs to be in. I think that looks okay. Maybe I'll bring this one in just a tad. Oops. Okay, we'll accept that. So this is kind of interesting because, looking at just this silhouette, just this form, we can get somewhat of an idea of the form. It gives us at least its profile, and we can get an idea of if the way these curves are moving in and out are pleasant or not. But looking at it in three-dimensional space is, of course, a better way to visualize. Using the record history command allows us to look at that in real time without having to redo the command. And this goes even further. Looking at it in digital space is, of course, not as informative as looking at it in physical three-dimensional space. So, for example, when I'm creating ceramic vessels, a common thing that I'll do is if I'm exploring some vessels and I have a few that I'm liking, I'll 3D print them purely for the purpose of seeing them in three-dimensional space before I invest much more time than I did 3D printing them to make them in porcelain. Okay, so yeah, cool. I'll take this, I'll do change layer. I forget what layer we're on. We've definitely done that one. Have we done this one? Yes, not this one. Okay, so I'll do change layer, pop it on the blue one. I did change layer, I meant to do copy to layer. Cool. Okay, that's there, right? Okay. So now I'm going to start manipulating this curve a little bit. So I'm going to turn on control points, and I think I'll grab this one, all of these interior curves. Maybe I'll grab these ones too. Probably an easier way to select these, but I've already committed. Okay. I'm going to bring these up a tad. Oops. Did I select anything I didn't want? No. Bring these up a tad. You can see the form is updating. And you would think that it would just impact how it terminates and how it starts, but you can actually see that there's some change in the whole surface. Okay, so I like that, and I was just undoing redoing to show those differences. And then I think I'll select these points, just the singular one on the tip, and I think I'll bring them down a wee bit. So again, we can look at the change in the form itself. Okay. It's kind of interesting. And now if I were to create a surface here, which maybe I'll do, it's not really part of this exercise, but I'll just do it to show you what I mean. I can use the dupe edge command, grab that edge. So I'm going to go in here, do something like this, maybe create that kind of curve, and then I can do a rail revolve again with this as my rail curve, from 0 straight up, and now we have this bottom surface. And cool thing about this is now we have a foot that maybe after we soften it up a little bit, it'd be nicer, but now we have a foot that when it meets the table, it casts a more interesting shadow. It's not just stuck to the table. It has some lift, has some elegance. Okay, I'll go ahead and delete this surface and this curve. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save this one. We'll do copy to layer. And then I think we'll do one last iteration. We'll take this curve over here. We're just going to have a little bit of fun with moving some of these points to the side and back. Just give it a little bit of wobble. And you can see it start to create this movement here. Sweet. So we can change layer. Oops, copy to layer, I mean. Pop it on over here. So let's check out our forms. Okay. Delete this one. We have our first iteration. Our second iteration, just with some tweaks. Maybe I'll pop them over here. Second iteration. And here we were just making tweaks to make the form a little bit more extreme, a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more elegant. Then we inserted some control points to get some recurve going on, have a gourd style face. Oops. And here we started to manipulate this bottom curve. Prior to that, we were just the rail curve. Prior to that, we were manipulating only the profile curve. And then finally, we did some manipulations in the y-axis with the profile curve. So here we have 5 variations from one singular vessel made extremely easy by using the record history command. I will see you next time.